I was asked, like, how did I come to this? And basically I was saying it was just being, like, completely exhausted with myself. Like, just the notion of, like, oh, it's there all the time, and trying things out, like, just thinking that the only way out was to die. Like, the only way to be over yourself was to die. And then thinking, well, what if that's not even the end? And then then you're dead, and there you are still with yourself. And not that I was trying to kill myself or thinking of it, you know, but anyway, just like done, like what the fuck, you know? And then it literally fell into my lap. I actually didn't, just being there, like always the thoughts and the this and the that and the worries and the things and the should want to do this, should do that, and it was like, the funny thing about it is, like, oh god, because we talked about all that before, like about this is it, and there's no difference between, because everything is it, there's no difference between, like, the person that apparently was in the past fed up with herself and going nuts and, you know, seeing death as the peace in it all, and the apparent person that's now, like, there is no self, and there has never been a self. It's all been everything, it which is completely and utterly unknowable. And that's one thing that has become known, is that nothing is knowable. Because if there is a because, which there isn't, but I'll make one up, nothing, if everything's coming out of nothing, just appearing here out of the blue, out of nothing, it takes us something to know nothing, right? So how can we know nothing? So is it coming out of nothing? It's unknowable. If it's not coming out of nothing, whatever all this is, it's unknowable. But the person that appears here now is now seeing that there's never been a self ever doing anything. It's all just been this isness appearing as that, appearing as the person that thinks it's a separate person, appearing as the person who is so sick and tired of herself that I seriously considered doing heroin just to shift everything, you know, like, hey, maybe that's, you know, like, and not because my life was bad, because I have a wonderful life, but just because I was so sick of myself and there was no escaping it. So the person now that's apparently not a person, but the isness that is just expressing itself through this, is no longer having that struggle, that internal struggle anymore, or that, like, however, stories still come up. Boredom was my main killer. That's why I wanted to try heroin, because I probably won't be bored if I'm doing heroin, you know. So boredom comes up still, you know, and it's not personal anymore. But even if it was, it's, you know, like if somebody else is struggling with something, it's not seen as a separate thing, like, oh, I know something, or I'm not something and you are something. It's just seen as it's all it. And there's a free-falling, free-flowing isness in that. And in knowing, if you can say that, see, the paradox is there's nothing knowable, yet I'm talking about knowing, but in knowing that this is it. This is it. It's never anything else. It's never should be any different than it is. Yeah. Which it sounds like it is. And okay, it's not any different in, like, there's the awareness, like, there's nobody doing anything, and there's nothing that you can control. Or, I mean, I used to be from this class of, like, think good thoughts and create your reality and all that, you know, and it's like, oh, if you're sick and you're poor, then that means you're not thinking the good thoughts and all that. And it used to be like, I used to be busy with that stuff, like, oh, okay, I gotta think good thoughts and everything. And now it's like, it's seeing through that none of that is real. It's just appearing and stuff. However, it's also seeing that happening about thinking good thoughts, and people who really believe that's how, that is also it. So there's nothing that is separate. It's just all arising, however it's arising. So one thing that's really changed, and again, it's not me doing it. It's not like I did something that led to this, and that is allowing me to see this and to feel and live this way. It's just what's appearing. But one thing that is seen is like a complete just release of holding on to anything, including thoughts, including feelings, including expectations. It's just like every desires, like, you know, like rushing to. We just came back from Texas, and rushing to the airport on the way there. It's like we're rushing because that's what's happening. But there's this thing, like if we miss the flight, that's just what's happening. We're not in control of it, and then that would be what happened. Whatever happens next would be whatever happens, and it's not even what happens next. It's just still like ploof, ploof, ploof. But whatever, in the story, that's how it appears. So one thing has been, there's no resistance, no. It's like of what this is doing and saying and not doing, and what everything else is doing or not doing or appearing, you know? If I see somebody trying to break into my car, and this is just hypothetical because the truth is, if I see somebody breaking into my car, however I respond or react, it's just, I don't know, it'll just happen. But there is no more, that person is doing something. It's just seen as isness, appearing as this character who apparently owns that car, and somebody who's that character breaking into it, you know, and that's it. And there's no attachment to the personal story or judgment of others and their story or expectations of it at all. And let me tell you, because many times in my spiritual journey, I thought, like, this is it, I got it. Like when I was a shaman, I paid thousands of dollars to go to these schools and had my rocks and my things, and I'm like, now I'm going to be validated by my family. They're going to see I'm someone important, I'm making a difference, this is special, this is something that they don't know, and I can help them with it. And I swear to God, like 1 minute back at a family reunion, all that shit's gone. You're back like that 12-year-old kid that's just like, no, like, yes master, yes master. But with this, because it's a losing of all that, it's like a falling away of all that. There's no more past, there's no more future, it's just what is happening. So there might be a communication that happens that's based on the past, like, oh, I remember when you did that to me, you're such an asshole brother, and that might happen, and it does. But there's no more, I don't know how to say it, like attachment to it or personal. It's like, I still might even get hurt by things that are said to me and whatever, but the feeling of it is just like, this is just what's happening. And those thoughts might not even be there. And again, if they are, they are. They're just thoughts. It's not like they're true or not true, or the right thoughts or the wrong thoughts. It's just like, oh, I'm having this thought about this, and thoughts arise. They don't mean anything. They don't cause, period. It's
so
a huge release. Huge release. But at the same time, and that's the paradox, you know, a lot of people, like a lot of the non-dualists, say it doesn't make any difference, you know, like it's all the same. And I get that, and it is, and there's nobody there that's controlling it. So the fact that there's a huge release that's being felt here, it's just what's arising in the moment. And in the story, it could be seen that, well, that happened, you found this, and this, the eye fell away, and that's created, and it is, that's how the story appears, you know. But the isness of everything is, it's not, there's not a separate me that feels like, well, it is like that, you know, in the illusion, like there's a separate me that feels like that, and a separate you that feels like that. But if it's seen that it's language, well, that it's all it, then all of a sudden it really doesn't matter that there's a release there and there's stress there and there's, you know, because it's all it. So there's no difference between anything, you know. But yeah, in the story, it's a tricky thing, you know, it really is, because it's like, yeah, well, it's like the carrot dangling, you know, and when it's seen that there is nobody and there is no freaking carrot, then the carrot falls away. And that is a relief, you know. It's the paradox. So again, in the story of time and space and all that, there is like the appearance of time, and this happened first and this happened, and then this experience or this understanding happened, and it all comes to this one point, which is this. but this one point is all that it ever has been, and all that it ever is. It's just appearing as that. So I'm precluding to what I wanted to say, but I'm probably making it more confusing. In the apparent story of how this happening or unhappening, whatever words, there was kind of a feeling of an expansion in it. You know, like it started like this, and there was these thoughts and these things, and then, you know, then it was like 100% no doubt. Like we would have many conversations about it, and she would say, how do you know this is not another belief? And I'm like, how do I know it's just another belief? I don't know that it's not another belief. But and then like it appears to have deepened into this isness, unknowableness, and it's not, because it's not anything and everything. So yeah, it can appear as belief, or somebody's perception that it's a belief, and an argument about the beliefness, and it's all it. So it's really hard to like go at it. But so this journey, one of the things that I kept kind of feeling was this oneness is extremely alone, because it's one. So everything is whole and one, and just feeling this. And I recently listened to a wonderful podcast, which I'll share with you all after if you're interested, that he expressed this so beautifully. But when he expressed it, I was hit. I'm like, I feel that a lot. It's like this, there is no separation, so everything is it. So it's alone, because it's all it, and it's all nothing appearing as everything. So that nothing is, how more alone can you be than nothing? Like there's nothing. And even and the other thing that was said about this, which is felt here too, it's not lonely, but it's nothing, and it's alone. It's and there's a sadness, you know, for the human in the story, that, you know, there's a sadness about that, but there's also this extreme like joy and beauty in it. It's all just, any language that we use to talk about this is all so paradoxical, which I think is hilarious, you know, as well as incredibly fucking frustrating. Little salt for you, Lord.
I didn't need the saltiness.
I know.
Wondering about the innocent YouTube watchers.
They're not innocent. They're watching this stuff. They're not innocent. And I got salt on my margarita. That's why it's. Yeah. So yeah, that was. And is it true? Is it? I mean, I don't know. Somewhere there's this knowing that there's nothing really appearing as everything. This void that is really all there is. But then. Yeah, sure. Is that a concept? I don't know. There's this void, and look at this. Look at my margarita. Look at the fire. Look at us. How's that nothing? But somehow, if you're drawn to this message and the seekers, you know, who are like questioning life, you know, like what is the meaning of existence? Who am I? What is it? There's some that do and some that don't, and it's all the same isness appearing as all that. I have to keep saying that because that kind of keeps me like there. Or actually, I'm just saying it because it's just what's being said. But that there's a feeling of that. There's a sense of truth to that. That yeah, and maybe like there are clues within the illusion, like dreams. You know, you wake up out of a dream, and in your dream, you've known people for like years, and then you wake up and you're like, who the hell were those people? I've never seen them before in my life, and then you're like, how? So I used to think like, how do we know that this moment wasn't just zapped into?
You guys doing okay? Or
How do we know that this
a little haggard this week?
This moment was it like we didn't exist a moment before, and all of a sudden this moment just arose, and the only thing we have to know that, to think we know that it works like this, you're born and da-da-da, you go to school, da-da-da, you die. You could have just woken up and that guy just got, like, in one instant. It's just memory. That's the only thing we know. That's the only way we know that there's time and there's thing and da-da-da. It's memory, because if we don't have memory, it's just this moment appearing and this moment appearing and this moment, and there's no memory of the last moment or the one that's coming or thought about. It's just boom, boom, boom. So there's clues in the dream that it reveals that it's a dream. And who's dreaming it and why is dreaming it, that's the unknowable part of it. And most of the time I'm not even thinking that way. It's just what's happening. But we're talking about it. We're talking about the untalkable, and that's what's being talked about. But yeah, it's not like I'm a RoboCop or something and I got like, no, it's no different than you, it's no different than anything. It's just, but in talking about it, it's just opening the subject into this realm of like talking about what all this is. I mean, people talk about like, all right, let's get our finances in order, or let's talk football, or and they don't, a lot of people don't think about that stuff. But like I said, if you're drawn to this, you think about stuff in a different way, not better or worse or whatever. It's just you're curious. And some people end up in this talk about isness, which is untalkable. And all of that people talk about sports or whatever, it's all it. There's nothing that isn't it. So when you see an appearance there that's happening, it's just isness appearing as that. And sometimes apparently in this person here, there is the awareness of that, or the thought that like the thoughts in my head are about that as it's happening. But there are times when you're just completely in what's happening, and that's all that is. You're not thinking about anything else or doing except for what's happening. But even thoughts about something else other than what's happening is just what's happening, So there's no escaping it. But then there's nothing to escape because it's all it. What would you escape if you're everything? The nothing, the other side of the coin. That's, yeah. The when I couldn't answer you because that's another thing that with the unknowing and just like living or just like things happen, like there's no need to know anymore, right? So, but again, nobody's doing it here. Nobody's like, oh, I figured this out and this is what I'm doing now so I can make it work and my life's awesome. Right. It's just what apparently is happening. Gotcha. And what's apparently happening here is there's no, there's no memory of like before, like in my work, I used to like have to write all my appointments down and stuff and because to remember, and it was like, I have to control this and make sure that now it's like, sometimes I write them down, sometimes I don't, but there's no need to like control it or know it. It's just like, and the ones I don't, that I almost forget, like today, it's like something will happen that reminds me and I'm like, oh God, I got like half an hour to get to there. Wow. And if it didn't and I would forget, then that's just what would be happening. There's no more like, so apparently what's in this head is like forgetting of a lot of stuff. Like time just becomes timeless. And it's just really about moments. And yeah, like we went to Texas and I knew we were there for 4 days and we planned it and we went to the airport on the day that we had to and came home on the day we had to. But there was no sense of time in that. Even in the planning of the airport, it's like, oh, now we're at the airport. It's just unfolding. So about when it happened, I'm not really sure. But if I look at the timeline, like, in the story, I don't know, probably like 2 years ago or something, starting with the jet stuff and all that. But anyway, and then for this in the story, there does appear to be a progression in the deepening of it, or in the losing it, or yeah. For me, like in the story, like the gym and the, especially the gym, like that just like, it just exploded my mind. It wasn't like I was like understanding it, like because of the way it came in, apparently, it just exploded my mind and I couldn't grasp it anymore, and therefore it was understood or seen or whatever, so that worked for me. Apparently in the story, but like my friend and I, we've been talking about this stuff. He lives in Holland, and he was saying that they're very mathematical, and I'm like, that's such a great analogy, because like the other ones, like, and if you haven't listened to Tim Kliss, you should totally listen to him. But they're like they're so colorful in their language of it. But and I was like, when I started, like, okay, I'm gonna go out there and talk about this, just simply because it appears to be that I love to talk about this stuff, and if I talk about it to people who aren't interested, that they just want to punch me in the face, all that is just completely fallen away or disappeared, you know, and all that's left is like, it's all it. And just because those people are speaking it like that, or those people are speaking about, you know, satanic rituals, it's all it. And I'd still be stuck with myself if it wasn't for the internet.
Stuck in Camp Party. My God.
So this is what they talk about in non-duality, and non-duality is everything is unconditional love. But we can't know conditional love, because you just gave an example of totally conditional love. Stealing someone's car is not unconditional. It's not love. It's not very loving. So to understand unconditional love, or it can be understood, but because it is everything. So when I first got introduced to this message, I kind of deviated from that, because I'm like, well, if it's everything, then why not call it unconditional hate? You know, like everything is hate, and it's, you know, so I was a little bit turned off. And again, it's just a story and a preference by the unconditional love, because if you're talking about something that cannot be known because it's unconditional, then, so talking about like unconditional love, like when people like argue, like we can know what unconditional love is, like, okay, why? Like, okay, the love I feel for my child is unconditional. And the beautiful argument I heard, it's not my own, should have claimed it on my own, no, I'm just kidding, was like, that is the most conditional love you can ever have. It's based on the condition that it's your child.
Yeah, there you go.
Voila! So we can't know unconditional love. So like that's a lot of the messages is everything is unconditional love, which sounds to the seeker or to anybody really is like, how can I not go for that? It's unconditional love, of course. I think it's like, I think the more, for me, and whatever, it's all true and not true, so it doesn't fucking matter, is it's unknowable. You can't say it's all unconditional love. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it is unknowable. And if you want to call it unconditional love, and nobody's there making that choice to call it, that is just how the expression is coming out. And the expression here is to say, like, hey, let's call it unconditional hate, and let's see how many followers I get, you know. I get it's all, it's just, that's all story, and that's, I get now why some of these guys, like the Jim Newmans and stuff, like when they give their talks, they're like 2, 7, 9, 146, you know, and I'm using that as a metaphor for their mathematical, like, there's no space for personal stories and everything, because and what this subject is about is everything, right? But if we start getting into that like that is it as well. But there's a story there. There's story there. There's almost impossible not to have story anywhere, right? Like stories is what humans do. They live them, they create them, they speak about them. When I talk about these, when I give these talks, as soon as it starts to branch out into this, like the mother's love and the criminal, and I know I use that as an example, but it was just saying, like, to see it like there's no separateness, it's all just that appearing as that, then I feel like I have to cut it, because it can go anywhere. It can be about anything, and even how to, like, you know, bake a chocolate cake can lead to that, which is also it. But for my video, I don't want to do that, because I also want to stay. I want to stay with the isness of as simple and ordinary as it can be, without any story attached. Are being commented like, okay, but what about like the starving children and the earth and the environment, you know, disintegrating, and the wars and and I'm like, wow, how do these people even end up watching these videos? That's my first question. Like, what the hell are these people doing watching these videos and then commenting on it? And honestly, I sense a comment that is related to this like just pure, like just as much as can be said without saying too much about this thing that is unknowable, I recognize that and I respond to that. The other stuff, I'm like, you guys go on and argue yourselves, have fun. And I read them because they're super entertaining. Some of them I'm just like, nah. And there's nothing right here and wrong there. It's just what's happening, you know? But in this sort of like field we're playing in about like talking about what is, it's so untalkable, you know? It really is. Or talk about anything and it isn't. But yeah, I choose to not go there. I mean, it's chosen through me to not, or whatever, blah, 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 to not engage that when we're talking about this stuff. Like, you know, if this wasn't enough, if we're like, hey, let's meet up for another drink next week and we'll talk about whatever. Who knows what we'll talk about? You know, maybe the same stuff, maybe not. You know, but for the sake of talking about this, which is again untalkable, I just happy you guys came out. Thanks. It's lovely to meet you.